Hello everybody, I'm Ian Abernethy and I'd like to briefly talk about what I call the common origins myth. One of the things that we tend to find in modern martial thinking is that we give ownership of a given method to a given martial system. What we find when we look back at the older methods, older martial arts, is they're generally a lot more holistic than their modern counterparts. Because in the past, you know, if you need a real fight, not a consensual fight, a non-consensual violence fight, you need skills in every single area. You don't need the skills necessarily to deal with a specialist in that area, but you need a wide range of skills. You need to be able to kick and punch and trap and grapple. You need all of that. You need to be able to deal with it and you need to be able to do it. And that's generally why most of the older systems are constructed in this holistic way. So if you look at old school karate, it includes locking and throwing as well as the striking for which it's known today. Look at old school boxing, it includes throwing. Look at old school judo, and it includes striking. You can pretty much any martial system you can think of over time tend to have shifted its focus from dealing with real situations to outfighting one of their own kind, and therefore it gets more specialized and the skills, other skills tend to get dropped off. So boxing is a good example. Old school boxing includes throwing and even weapons and locking and all this kind of stuff. You can see this in the old boxing texts. But you won't find a boxing gym that practices that today because they're more solely focused on outboxing other boxers. And a similar thing happened with karate. The old version of karate has a lot of locking and throwing, trapping. You can see all of this in the old text. It's clearly recorded in the old forms. But as people have started to shift to fighting their own kind, it becomes primarily about kicking and punching at mid to long range. So this specialization has the negative effect is it makes you very one-dimensional. The positive effect of that is it makes you better in your specialized area. So what we tend to do today is we tend to associate certain skills with the area, with the art that's specialized in those skills. So if you see judo and throwing, you tend to see a two-handed shoulder throw and you think, oh, that's a judo throw. Well, it's certainly true that judo specialize in that, and it's certainly true that judo do that better than anybody else, but it didn't evolve with judo. Or just with judo. And because people see that and they go, okay, it's a judo throw, they then start to hypothesize about, well, how did it find its way into other arts? So if karate does a shoulder throw, you know, which again, we see in the likes of Funakoshi and Itaman, clearly they did, they called it different things, but they did do what in judo would be recognized as a shoulder throw. And we see it in the forms. When people see this, one of the first assumptions is, well, how did that judo technique get its way into karate? Well, it's asking the wrong question because you're going the wrong way through history. It didn't find its way into karate from judo. What happens is it evolved independently of judo. Common physiology and common problems necessitate common solutions. Whereas there's a bad assumption today that if arts have common methods, they somehow must be linked. People don't accept the idea that art can evolve similar methods together, independently of one another. They come to the same conclusions, but independently. Now, a good example of this is the bow and arrow. It wasn't that one culture invented the bow and arrow and then went on their bow and arrow world tour, right? Different people in different points of history realized that was the most effective way to fire a projectile over a given distance for hunting and for combat. They all developed it independently. Now, that's the same when you come to a hip throw. Pretty much every system you can think of will have one in there, or the older systems will. But they'll develop it independently because it's a good way to throw somebody. It's just like no one person invented the cross. Right, and then went on a world tour giving it to jujutsu players and karateka and Thai boxers and boxers. That's not the way that it worked. Independently, people worked out this is a good way to hit a guy in the head with your fist. And therefore, you know, you find that method in lots and lots of different systems. Probably the worst example I've seen of this in media was there was a documentary done by a well-known TV station where they were looking at the old ancient Greek martial arts, and they were saying how you find the shoulder throw in old Greek pancras. They then started to hypothesize about how that shoulder throw had found its way into modern judo, even suggesting that maybe Alexander the Great had took it down to near Japan on his travels. It's just obvious nonsense. They just all worked out independently that this was a good way to throw people. So, a couple of takeaway points. One is all the versions of our martial arts tend to be much more holistic. They contain a wider range of methods. The modern versions of those arts tend to specialize inside a given skill set. So therefore, we tend to associate that skill set with that art and only with that art. But that's not the way it happened, okay? The older versions of the art have these methods in them too, although they'll be done to different degrees. And therefore, it can be tempting to assume that, okay, how did that jujutsu lock find its way into karate? Well, it was it didn't find its way in. Two different groups of people worked out that lock independently of one another. This is how it worked in the past. And we've got to remember, this wasn't the days of the internet where things could be shared instantly. It wasn't like, some guy. So, for example, you can, my part of the world, we have Cumberland and Westmoreland Wrestling, which was allegedly brought here by the Vikings, and it has a hip throw in it. So it's not like, this Viking went on a world tour to show everyone the hip throw that he'd invented. Different groups of people independently developed common methods. And I think we need to be mindful of that. Otherwise, we get our history completely messed up and we don't understand the evolution of our art. So I hope this has been useful. I hope you found it of some use, and I'll be back with more information soon. Okay, thanks for watching. Okay, take care now. Bye-bye.